Compliments must be given to those we usually criticize and destroy, perhaps rightly so, for the start of the World Cup. What has he done? Lando Norris will start from pole position in Monaco, in a moment of pressure both from the season and also from the Monaco qualification. With the barriers all close, Lando manages to print a 1.9 and 954, the only driver to go under the wall of 10, in first position, ahead of an extraordinary also Charlie Leclerc, and ahead of his teammate third Piastri, who stops at 110, 129. With the better car, he couldn't get past Leclerc. Behind, we have Hamilton, fourth, fifth Verstappen, who perhaps could have done a little more. And sixth is Aguiar, who comes just 2/10 behind Verstappen. Seventh Alonso, eighth Kohn, ninth Lawson, 10th Albon, and so on for the rest. But let's talk about Norris, because Norris, guys, did something amazing. In my opinion, with this pole, Piastri was the favorite to win it, not the number one suspect. Then we saw that gradually in FP3 and also in Q1 and Q2, Norris has grown a lot and McLaren objectively had a superior pace compared to the others, even in qualifying simulation. Let's now analyze everything thoroughly. I also want to read you the times, and we're going to look at all the moments of the session and how the teams can also face tomorrow's race. Before we start, of course, I remind you to leave a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any videos that come out here on the channel. Of course, I always update you on all the Formula 1 news, and we go on to analyze each session in detail. So let's put the standings back for a moment, and I'll read you the times of the last attempt made in Q3 between Norris and Leclerc. In fact, in the first sector, Norris went faster by 74 thousandths. And in fact, he made a sensational time in 18-2 with Piastri, who went even faster than them. In fact, I'll show you here the best sectors Piastri even did. 18-1 then in the second sector between Leclerc and Norris. Leclerc went faster. Compared to Norris, in fact, we see that he did 33-1 while Norris did 33-2. And in the third sector, where Norris really made the difference to Antonino, Guess did 18-4 against the 18-5 done by Leclerc, and the 18-5 also done by Piastri. So the real difference Norris made was in the last sector, which is where you have the most tension. You're on the last attempt of the qualifiers, you're pulling out all the stops as time has run out, and you don't let anything go, not even in the last sector. So a masterful lap by Norris, it must be said, but personally I also want to say something and take a moment to express my opinion. The judgment on Norris will be given after the start, because Norris has a lot to prove even at the start.
It's good to keep cool even during the race.
Let's remember, for example, last year he was leading in Singapore with over 20 seconds advantage, and he hit the wall touching the barriers, then fortunately stayed on track. However, he needs to try to show clarity and not fall into last year's mistakes. Norris, so be careful, because personally the judgment on Norris should be postponed to tomorrow's race to see if he really is back in the fight for the driver's title, because so far he's done well but not very well. In the sense that, anyway, Piastri is ahead in the World Championship. In terms of points, he seems to be the predestined driver to fight for the title this year. However, with this pole, Norris has certainly re-established some of the hierarchies at McLaren, in the sense that up until now, Piastri was gaining a bit more importance within the team. Now, Norris, with this pole, has said, hey guys, watch out, I'm also in the fight for the world title. This is a good pole from Norris. However, he also needs to show in the race that he can start well, which is crucial. And that's where Leclerc needs to take advantage of Norris, namely at the start, because it could be a weak point of the English driver. And also try to maintain clarity during the race with the 2 mandatory pit stops to try to stay up front. But we obviously also have to talk about Leclerc's second position and Hamilton's fourth position. Guys, Leclerc performed a miracle. He performed a miracle. It has to be said. In the last attempt in Q3, getting close to the wall of 1.9, he did 1.10 low. He made an incredible time. And the most incredible thing, in my opinion, is also the gap with Hamilton. Because anyway, if we also look at the standings, Leclerc has a 10th in 1:10.063, Hamilton 1:10.382. Anyway, he manages to beat a 7-time world champion by more than 3/10. So that's quite something. Also this lap from Leclerc, who once again made the difference in qualifying over his teammate. And it must be said, he got the most out of the single-seater. It's a shame he missed pole. We all wanted it for him. Yesterday I predicted Leclerc, Piastri, Norris, but instead it was Norris, Leclerc and Piastri. They are the ones who could fight for pole. I didn't underestimate Norris too much yesterday, while many even had him outside the top three. In my opinion, with this car, you can't underestimate Norris. And in my opinion, Leclerc could have taken the pole, and he proved it again today, that he was right there to take it. This pole, it's a shame because Leclerc believed in it so much. We also saw the disappointment afterwards, having then got out of the single-seater after the qualifications. However, he really got close to it. He will start in the front row. It's a race where we will also see 2 stops. So really anything can happen in my opinion. And the possibility of winning for Charles is also there tomorrow. So this is little but sure. It will be important to have a good strategy. Obviously, we also need to pay attention to those who start from behind, because we have the problem with Russell. What happened in qualifying, which then relegated him to 14th position. He had a problem with the engine, probably the battery, and was stuck under the tunnel. And then we also have Antonelli, who instead went against the barriers due to that mistake at the port chicane. What a pity. A mistake we'll discuss later, but also note the others. This is some of what I wanted to say. That Mercedes starts from 14th with Russell, 15th with Kimi, and so they can come up with a different strategy. And of course, pay attention to Verstappen, to Hamilton, even behind, who can try to climb up, and of course to Piastri, who will start. Third attention that McLaren will want to do 1-2 with the drivers. Papaya, however, did a great qualifying on Leclerc. In my opinion, it was really difficult to do more than this, and I have to be honest, it's okay in that sense, guys. Starting second in Monaco, when Leclerc on Thursday said winning is almost impossible. If we win, I'll make it too. Backflip to Fred Vassar, it means that the chances were practically minimal and you find yourself there, a 10th from the pole position. Hamilton had a bit more trouble. Instead, let's also talk about Lewis, who had that accident in FP3. In my opinion, it caused him some problems in the sense that he lost some confidence. Let's go back and review the mistake Hamilton made in FP3 and comment on it. Here it is. So just a moment. Here it is. Okay, I got it. Let's go back and review it together. We comment on it. Blind curve. That's one of the mess. Let's move on. He finds 2 cars in front of him, a Mercedes and a Haas. He steers immediately to avoid hitting them. And in my opinion, Hamilton didn't expect to find the cars in front here. And there could also have been poor communication between Riccardo Adami and Lewis himself. And so unfortunately, he is forced into this mistake. Here's a curve where you also do with the gas in support, so it's also difficult to change the trajectory. Unfortunately, Lewis made this mistake by going against the barriers. Fortunately, there were no serious damages. And then after the qualifications, he did them. However, it's inevitable that in the first sector, you lose a bit of confidence in this area of the circuit. Among other things, Hamilton, who was also involved in a sort of impeding with Max, with Verstappen, which from my point of view wasn't there. In fact, he wasn't even penalized. But, you know, even there, a small communication error between Riccardo Adami and Lewis Hamilton made a difference. It's true about Monaco. It's challenging to keep distances between drivers, particularly during the slow lap. However, in short, this is a weekend where Hamilton, not even having full control from the single-seater, it's normal that he made some mistakes. Starting 4th, in my opinion, however, already ahead of Max is a big deal, so it's still okay for him. However, this qualification always remains a slightly backward step compared to Leclerc. So, among other things, we also saw the bottom of Lewis. I'll show you the images too. Well, first I'll show this comparison that was made with Alonso. They both made this mistake too, crashing in FP3 in Monaco with Alonso when he was at Ferrari. However, Alonso's accident was much more serious than Hamilton's. So in fact, it was Alonso's. We also recall the apology he gave to his mechanics and others. And Hamilton's, on the other hand, was more of a mistake, but less serious. This is the bottom of the Ferrari, with obviously all the various pressure gauges of the bottom that are placed in the Venturi channels. And also under the front wing, in fact, we see a bit of this machine bristling with these pressure gauges, and it also shows us the Ferrari's Venturi channels. However, this year we then saw the accident of the Mercedes. let's discuss an amusing scene among other topics. Between the comparison of Kimi Raikkonen, who left for his yacht by climbing, having retired from the race in 2006, and the comparison with Kimi Antonelli, who instead retired in qualifying. And then he returned to the pit. The walk, among other things, is very long to get to the Monaco pit. So it's about Kimi Antonelli's mistake. In my opinion, guys, it was a mistake that happens in such a long season. It's a mistake a bit due to the youth, even of the boy, in my opinion. It's a shame it didn't happen in free practice. It's true, but these are mistakes that happen, and starting from behind in Monaco is bad because it's also difficult to recover. However, these are mistakes that we have to allow an 18-year-old rookie driver who is already racing in Mercedes. I mean, consider that on the other hand, for example, we have Russell, who has had experience in Williams for several years and then arrived at Mercedes. And in Williams, he was also allowed some mistakes. The same Max Verstappen made many mistakes, both in Toro Rosso, but also when he arrived at Red Bull. And so it's normal to make mistakes when you're young, especially when pushing to the limit in qualifying. Besides, it's a mistake that isn't even that serious from my point of view. In the sense that he got the measurements of a turn wrong leaving the port and then unfortunately he hit the wall. He'll face consequences for his actions, but fortunately he wasn't physically harmed. The engine, so he doesn't have to change power unit elements. Yes, this is good, especially since after the withdrawal that there was in Imola a bit, the power unit issue for Mercedes is not really well placed. Well then, however, come on, let's find a bit of the positive side. In short, this mistake is acceptable for Kimi, we forgive him, as we do the other rookies. They make several mistakes, and then we have also seen for Russell. The misfortune at Mercedes obviously must be accompanied in the sense that Russell also stopped in the tunnel. In this case, perhaps Russell could have stopped earlier, because then they lost some time to remove the car. It wasn't Russell's fault this time. Battery issue caused the withdrawal, making it a challenging race for Mercedes. It must be said that Mercedes, regardless of this 14th and 15th position, had not shown in the free practice here in Monaco, so it makes sense. It's a weekend that had started off badly. We already said it in last week's videos that it's a Mercedes that couldn't do much here in Monaco because of the many slow curves. And so it starts from behind, but it's not even a weekend where they could have excelled more. The thing that impressed me the most, if you will, is, well, once again, Tsunoda out of the top 10 starts 12th with both Racing Bulls, in the top 10 with Lawson 9th and 6th. Open. And guys, I want to say it one more time. Yesterday we talked about Ajah, the I'm So Stupid radio team, etc. But this Ajah is surprising us. Whatever races or qualifications he participates in, he's always the top driver at Racing Bulls. In this case, I'll show you the ranking again. He came within 0.2 of a second of winning. Which anyway, in Monaco you can see the driver's skills. Well, Ajah is a great driver, and I hope that the Red Bull sphere will be able to highlight him and not burn him out. Instead, as it has done with all its young talents, with the exception of Max Verstappen. So we'll see a bit how it will be managed. It must be said that in my opinion, Ajah is a driver who is growing. He is not making many mistakes. He made them in free practice yesterday, it's true, but he doesn't make them much in the race. So this is good. We'll see how Ajah develops, but he's a good driver that I really like. I've been saying it for a while. In fact, since the beginning of the season, I keep repeating it, and I'm more and more convinced, even more than Lawson, even more than Tsunoda. He seems to me the driver in Red Bull who is enhancing the qualities of the car the most, in this case in Racing Bulls. Having said that, Verstappen, only 5th Verstappen, in my opinion, he could have done a little more. I must admit, I also like guys named Max. He is the best driver on the grid, that is. He is currently a phenomenal driver. But when we say he can't extract the maximum potential according to his abilities, why if we compare him to Tsunoda? Obviously, he did much better, but in my opinion, Max had the potential to also make the top 3. Unfortunately, he didn't succeed today. He did a lap, not at the limit, so much so that he also did not improve on the last attempt. So in my opinion, he will be able to do a little more. Max knows it too, but anyway, he will start 5th. So not bad for a Red Bull that is slightly struggling this weekend in Monaco. Instead, we have a Ferrari and McLaren vying for the top positions and the podium. And so a Red Bull that is slightly behind, even compared to Ferrari in this case. And I also want to show some other very interesting images. So first of all, let's look at the telemetry with the comparison between McLaren and Ferrari. I want to show this very interesting telemetry. Leclerc versus Norris, we see that Leclerc does the chaotic part very well. And that curve where Hamilton crashed, Leclerc really goes strong there. And I said it yesterday too, he made a difference both on Hamilton this year, but also on Sainz in past years. The Leclerc that in that part there manages to hold more gas, rotate the car better and go faster. While at a slower section, so after the casino, after the part where the circuit somehow crests, all that slower part there, the McLaren driven by Norris is faster. Also at the Alpine section and even before the tunnel and afterwards at the pool section, Charles is going faster, while at the Rascas and the Antonino Nogues, the McLaren is going faster, in this case with Norris. This aligns with what we observed in the qualifications and some of these parameters. With McLaren going faster in the slow curves, Ferrari is going faster in the medium speed curves. Ground clearance is also an interesting parameter. They are very similar, as we said, with McLaren, which is slightly lower than all the others. And anyway, we have a Ferrari that here in Monaco is not as bad as we have seen on the other tracks. This is something positive, guys. We also have to take what is positive about the SF25. It's true that Monaco is not a canonical track. You don't see the real potential from single-seaters. The average speeds are very low. All very true, though. However, you also have to go fast in Monaco. You need to have that car that can get you ahead. Then the talent of the drivers counts more in Monaco than the car. I agree, however, it's a small step forward for the SF25. We'll see if it can also improve with the Barcelona updates. And then after those, that will also arrive at Silverstone. And so this is a bit of what we've seen from the qualifications. Now let's focus a bit on the race, because we've said that Mercedes will start from behind, so they might try a different strategy. In my opinion, Mercedes will try to stop one or two drivers, maybe in the early laps, so they lose less time getting closer to the group ahead and not being in the traffic. They might use this strategy with both drivers, but maybe one driver wants to wait for the safety car or the virtual safety car, which is very likely to happen in Monaco. So watch out for Mercedes, who might immediately make a pit stop. And also pay attention up front, because both McLaren and Ferrari will be vying for the win. And whoever stops first could have an advantage with the undercut. So there's Angostelli, an unknown factor here. It will be important to do everything right at the P-stop, even during, indeed, the stop. In terms of seconds, we'll see a bit how it goes. So far, Ferrari has been very good at the P-stops this year. So in my opinion, it can do well in that too. McLaren has excelled in the P-stops, but it's a game. In my opinion, tomorrow's race is more open than a typical Monaco race, without the obligation of two stops. So it will be interesting to see if maybe a driver will be sacrificed to block someone else. There may also be some team radios and team orders about it. Having said that, guys, this is pretty much all I had to tell you about these qualifications that I let you review. According to Leclerc, 4th Hamilton, this is the Ferrari graphic that lets us review it. This is the starting grid, with Norris who will start from the outside. And also pay attention to this detail here with Leclerc inside. We might see a Leclerc, if he starts well, immediately take the lead of the race. And this could be a very advantageous thing, especially with this year's new guidelines, where all you need is to have the car side by side to have the position. And at the start, they are even more lenient. Leclerc could immediately take the lead of the race at the start. Be cautious. Max begins in 5th position. This is the starting grid. Another thing I want to show you is Hamilton and Verstappen, who spoke after the qualifiers. Now, having seen this scene, obviously they were certainly talking about the misunderstanding that occurred between Hamilton and Verstappen. After what happened in the impeding, however, in short, it's a stalemate. Hamilton will not be penalized. Okay, having said that, I also want to tell you, in fact, here is mine. Let's see, this was the document that came out, and we might see maybe 3 grid positions. Be careful, there might be this. Now let's see, there might be maybe 3 penalty grid positions. Let's see if they are announced. The grid has already been announced in theory with Hamilton 4th, but we will see if there will be 3 positions on the grid. It was an episode of impeding, a bit, let's say, not clear. It will be interesting to see if things are clarified afterwards. In theory, Verstappen didn't face any repercussions, but we'll see if there will be consequences, obviously. I'll update you in the video below. That said, I also want to predict the race outcome. And I tell you, in my opinion, we will see. Leclerc, Norris, Piastri. I say this prediction here. I believe in Leclerc's victory. In my opinion, it can happen. Also because Norris doesn't always start well. Maybe with strategies we can do something better. Ferrari has set a good race pace, so we'll see. We'll see. Also tell me your prediction in the comments, and as always I remind you to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any video that comes out here on the channel. Leave a like to support me and also tell me your prediction in the comments. I'm curious to read and respond to everyone. I'll leave you other related videos here from Nasaduto. See you in the next video.